Okay, admit it. How many of you made chocolate chip cookies last week? I hope a lot of you did, because they were really good. I know because I ate more of them than I should have. So, two questions came up about those chocolate chip cookies, or regarding them, or as a result of them. One of which, no surprise, since I alluded to it last week, was the question of sugars and white sugar versus brown sugar when it comes to making cookies. So, as I mentioned, I have a lot of cookbooks that talk about cooking and chemistry. And one of my favorites is Cookwise by Shirley Coaher. In case you're wondering how or why things happen, this is the hows and whys of successful cooking. So there you go. In case the name sounds familiar, it may not. She actually was on Good Eats, Alton Brown's show. She was the person who would show up periodically whenever he needed a nutritional anthropologist. So she knows what she's talking about. And so in here, there's information about sugar. And forgive me if I'm going to read. So the type of sugar affects both browning and crispness, as we know. For instance, glucose, otherwise mainly corn syrup, browns at a lower temperature than table sugar. Table sugar is white sugar. So if you substitute in some corn syrup for your white sugar, the cookies are going to brown a little bit more, and they will also be a little bit crisper on the top. Interesting. Standard white sugar, if you have a high sugar content with a low moisture content, then the sugar will crystallize when the cookie cools, and the cookie will turn hard and crisp. You also have to have no acidic ingredients. So I was actually thinking of trying this recipe out, but using either ginger or lemon, and you wouldn't want to do that if you're trying to figure out what sugar is doing, because those would both add acid. Brown sugar, on the other hand, contains molasses and sugars other than plain white sugar. Some of those sugars that are in brown sugar absorb moisture from the atmosphere and make baked products softer. They actually can also soften upon standing. Instead of with white sugar, they'll dry out and get crisp. These will actually get softer. And finally, she does mention honey as well, which contains 42% fructose, or fruit sugar. And this is very hygroscopic, meaning that it absorbs moisture from the atmosphere, so cookies made with honey will soften very quickly upon standing. So they'll get even softer than, say, a cookie made with brown sugar. Okay, so that was the first question. And I am going to actually, I decided that while I was at it, I was going to go ahead and make that key recipe that we talked about last week that just has white sugar. Going to make that as well as some of the brown sugar ones, just to see, to compare the two. You know, science is all for science. It has nothing to do with me wanting cookies. The other question that came up was actually a question of, why did I grease the pan? The recipe says butter the pan, so I buttered the pan. But there was a question as to why. Why do you do that? Does it make the cookies spread more? Does it make the cookies spread less? My assumption has always been that it just makes them come off the sheet pan easier, so the chocolate doesn't burn to the pan. I have no idea which is the correct answer on that. So, again, as I mentioned, I'm going to do the sugar cookies, the key recipe with the white sugar. But then I'm also going to go ahead and do a batch of the chocolate chip cookies. And for those, we're going to do an experiment and find out what happens if you grease the cookie sheet versus if you don't grease the cookie sheet. The one very strange thing about both of these is, contrary to my usual way of doing things, I'm going to do a regular sized batch on each of them, which is going to be very weird because they're very small amounts of cookies. So hang out as usual, scroll down. You don't have to wait, it's all there already. And I'll be back in a little bit to let you know how everything turned out. Cool, thanks.